Alright, for today's video, we will be talking about bias. Now, bias is used when we're talking about surveys and sample sizes, because if we don't have things that are unbiased, then our results are going to be skewed, and we don't want that, because if we do, then our survey results have to be thrown out. So the first thing we need to know is we need to know what the definition of bias is. So bias is a personal judgment that is not neutral or reveals an existing opinion. In other words, this is considered a bad question. You do not want to ask a biased type of question unless you want a certain type of answer. So moving on, we're going to go into a couple examples here talking about bias. So our first one here, we have at a local college, approximately 71% of the 87 survey respondents said they would vote in the next presidential election. So first off, they want us to identify the information that was gathered. So when we go through and do this, there were 87 survey respondents that were asked, and we were told that 71% of them said they would vote. So that's our information. Second thing we wanted to know is they wanted us to formulate a targeted neutral question. So in other words, they want us to ask an unbiased question. So you've got to think to yourself a good unbiased question. So a question such as, let's get my little text tool, such as, are you planning to vote? Would be a very good unbiased question. Because at that point, you're not trying to emphasize that you want them to emphasize that you don't want them to vote. It's just a very neutral question. The next thing they want us to do is they want us to formulate a biased question. So in other words, a bad question. That means either we want them to say yes, they are going to vote, or no, they are not going to vote. So one example of such a question is, do you think if you vote, your vote will change things? Because if they do not believe that their vote is going to change something, why should they vote in the first place? So it's kind of trying to swing people to the other way of thinking. So our next example here about bias is we're talking about video game. So we're told it has been reported that 83% of video game users have a grade point average of 75 or below. So question 1 wants us to identify the information that was gathered. In this case, it tells us there were two pieces of information. So the first piece of information is that they had a grade point average of 75 or below. The second piece was that 83% of game users have that. So that's our two pieces of information. So now, next step, they want us to formulate a targeted neutral question. So they want us to formulate a good, unbiased question about this. So a good question, for example, could be kind of a two-parter. First off, do you play video games? And then if the answer yes, if so, what is your grade? Because that way they can get the data they need to determine the average that they're looking for. Now, next up, it wants us to ask a biased question to skew the results. So we want to ask a bad question. So for example, a bad question could be, do you believe, now it is right, it should be right, that gamers should make A's? Because at this point, I'm expecting people to say no, because it's not fair for me if I have to work really, really hard. So that's pretty much a very good basis on what biased and unbiased is. Take a minute, try these 5 questions. See if you can determine which ones are biased and which ones are unbiased. All right. The way we can generally tell is we look at the adjectives in it. So I'm going to get out my pen. All right, so number one, can you really say tea is better than coffee? They're trying to get people to say no here because of that word really. So this right here is a bias question, most definitely. To rewrite it, you could probably just take out the word really and replace that word can with do, and you would be pretty much fine. Take out better. All right, number two, is reading fiction really a worthy pastime? There is that word really again. They're trying to get people to say no. So I bet you if we just took out that word, we would then come up with an unbiased question. All right, number three, can you honestly prefer watching slow baseball to action-packed basketball? This one is most definitely a biased question. They're trying to get people to pick basketball. So I bet you if we replace that word can with do, we take out honestly, we take out slow for baseball, take out the word or take out the word to, replace it with the word or, and take out action-packed, and we have a very good unbiased question. Number four, on average, how many mornings during the week do you eat breakfast? That is a very good unbiased question. And then number five, don't you think stricter penalties should be introduced for people who don't clean up after their dogs in the dog parks? That is a very biased question. They want people to say, yes, we want stricter penalties. But if we take out the don't and replace it with do you think stricter penalties should be introduced for people? Then yes, this one could be going either way. To make it even better, you could check out in the dog parks to be specific. And that way it makes it a better unbiased question.